Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello and welcome to Learning to Glow. This is your host, Jess, and I'm so excited about today's episode. This is all about breathwork, and we have an amazing guest. His name's Frankie, and he has been guiding breathwork for the past 8 years. He has explored many different styles with many different teachers, but he has a firm foundation in the teachings and guidance from world-renowned breathwork teacher, healer, and author David Elliott. Through David, he has received multiple breathwork healer certifications by attending many healer trainings and retreats. Frankie has guided breathwork in the California prison system, mental health facilities, addiction treatment centers, yoga festivals, various studios across California, and his own private healing studio located on Balboa Island. Whether it's guiding hundreds of people at once or guiding a single client through a one-on-one experience, no two experiences are the same, and this always keeps things interesting. Frankie has a unique ability to hold a safe space and make things fun by not doing too much and trusting that spirit will do all the heavy lifting. Frankie and I had the most amazing conversation. I really hope you get a lot out of this episode. If you're new to breathwork, you're in the right space. If you've been meditating for a long time, you can also get something amazing out of this episode. I love that he gives us some really simple tips to get started if we're brand new. We talk about benefits, some of his past experiences working in the prison system, which is so interesting. So I hope you enjoy this episode. It's a good one. And here is Frankie. Hello and welcome, Frankie. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you. We've been talking for a while, so it's great that we're finally getting this conversation going. And I like to start all of my episodes with just simply tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, all that good stuff.
Cool. Yeah. So, I've been facilitating breath work for about 8 years now. And it's been, I always like to say, like, I didn't really find breath work found me.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because it found me at a time in my life when I really needed it. I was looking for, I think, that next phase of my personal development and my conscious contact with spirit, and breath work introduced me to a whole nother level of that. And so it's been quite a journey. It's been a pretty intense roller coaster with it. But when I say intense, I mean that in the best way possible, because I've been a part of, and not attached to, but have witnessed a lot of like really profound experiences for people, healing experiences for people through the breath. I had mentioned to you in the different areas that I facilitate in. I've guided breathwork in the California prison system, like countless mental health facilities, hospitals, addiction treatment centers, soccer moms, big wave surfers. I mean, you name it. And it's no two experiences are alike. And it's just really cool to be a witness to the power of the breath.
That's amazing. I want to talk more about some of those experiences that you've facilitated, but I want to start by kind of breaking down. So what are we even talking about? What is breath work to you, and what does it look like? Because I think a lot of people, maybe even listening to my podcast, they think of breath work as like maybe you go to a yoga class and you're paying attention to your breath, or, different, just like maybe meditations and things like that. So can you like kind of break down what you mean by breath work and, what you actually are kind of doing with your clients?
Yeah. So I mean, you kind of just said it. So the breath work is it's a broad term, right? And there's a lot of different styles of breath work, but really in essence what it is an active form of meditation. So it is a form of yoga. It's a form of pranayama yoga. Now there's different styles of breathwork. There's holotropic breathwork, and there's there's Wim Hof, and there's all these different things, but specifically the breath work and I've experienced them all. I've done, workshops and trainings and this and that and the other, and have practiced them myself, but I always come back to and this very simple pranayama breath work, which is a 2-stage pranayama, meaning 2 stages, meaning that you take 2 inhales and 1 exhale. And it's really, really simple. It's when I say it's an active form of meditation, it's because you have to participate in it, in actually doing the breath. It's, facilitating is holding a safe space for somebody so they feel safe enough to dive in, trust that they can just let go and see where the breath takes them. Because really the breath does all of the heavy lifting. It's an activation of your spirit, really. It's your life force. So to the word inhale, I believe in Greek means to inspire. So you are inspiring yourself, your physical temple, with spirit. You are inviting in spirit. It's our life force. So when you do this repeatedly over and over, and really in the form that I guide, it doesn't take but 20 minutes. It's not like doesn't have to be like a 3-hour holotropic journey. It's really about that trust factor, and that's why we go back to just holding a safe space for people, because if they feel like they can trust the experience, then they'll just really go for it. But what happens is you start to activate certain glands in your brain. We have our chakra system, and these are like ductless glands, basically. So when certain glands in our brain start to excrete certain chemicals, it starts to bring in a sense of euphoria, vibration, tingling sensations. And this is when it takes people out of their mind, out of their thinking mind. Because if I'm going to ask you to sit here and sit quietly and meditate, it's extremely difficult, even for people that have been, doing it for a long time. But if I'm just going to ask you to just lay down and breathe, what happens is, almost always with everybody, myself included, when I start to breathe, my mind it's chattering. It's thinking about this, that, or the other. But when your body starts to vibrate, it takes you out of your mind into your body. And this is where we hold all of our feelings, our trauma, our emotions. All of the things are hold like primarily in our second chakra, our fourth chakra, our heart, and our sacral. So that's where the breath is. The breath that I guide is the precision of the placement of those inhales into those 2 areas is what gets everything moving for people.
Well, it's interesting because you were talking about the physical sensations that come up, and I've actually I went to a breathwork circle, and we were doing this. I didn't know what to expect either, because when you hear breathwork, like you said, it's such a broad. I breathe every day. It's like I do sometimes try to focus on my breath. I have done meditation where I just sit there and I try to focus on my breath. I did not expect to feel like such powerful sensations in my body. And when you say too, people are storing emotions and trauma, there were people on the floor just bawling. And after we had experienced this class we had a guide as well. And I was just like, wow, it was so incredible that was just from doing this breath work, and everybody felt so good afterwards. Like, it was such an interesting experience because it was not what I expected, and how like powerful that was. And then the experience in a group too was really neat, because we kind of talked about what we were feeling, but the physical sensations and how powerful that was. Like you said, you're not thinking of like, oh, I need to go to the store tomorrow and pick up something. Like, you're really focused on what's happening in your body. Yeah. It's so neat. What do some of your clients?
Yeah, it forces you into your body.
Yeah.
Loving
yeah, and I guess that it wasn't like easy either. I'd like to talk about that, because like it's like it was pretty intense as far as like the breathing part goes. Like, you're really exerting yourself. Would you say that's true when you're guiding people as well?
It just depends. When we were talking about your experience that you were you were just mentioning the circle you did, you said there was a lot of people that were bawling, and you had a very euphoric, joyful, happy experience, right?
Hmm.
So everybody, we are always changing, growing. We're always, our field is being inundated with other people's energies. If you're very sensitive, empathic, and maybe you haven't learned how to manage that yet, people can pick up a lot of stuff. Maybe you work at a job where there's an abusive coworker or something. I mean, the list goes on and on. Maybe you still get that phone call every Thursday from your mom who likes to talk to you like you're 10 years old, or whatever the case may be, right? So everybody's in a different place, and I mean every day.
Mm.
I think for me, and I've kind of had to learn, I've really learned, when I say to navigate my way through this, it's meaning to the less I do and the more that I trust spirit to do the work, the person's breath, they'll get the experience that they're meant to get. When I start to get too involved, and if I start coaching people, okay, breathe hard, I'm taking my trust out of the power of the breath and thinking that I need to control the situation. Now, there's times where I get messages and I'll, be told to use a tuning fork or a singing bowl or an essential oil spray or an oil, or actually some physical hand placement to move some energy, or even just to move energy through Reiki. But it's never the same. There's, like, again, no two experiences are like for the client and for myself. And so if I need to push somebody, I will. If I can tell there's a block. When I say push somebody, if a person is really feeling blocked, it's not them, it's the energy that's blocking them, whatever's kind of working through them, or maybe kind of controlling them, or has them stuck. So I speak to the energy, not the person. It's more speaking to the energy. And when you call energy out, it shines a light on it, and it's like seen. And then usually in moments like that, because a person is so attached to what they're carrying, whether it's trauma or whatever the case may be, it activates emotions in them, because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm being seen in this moment. And that might not even be a conscious thought, but that's with how their body feels. So sometimes, during a one-on-one session, I won't say a word. I will not say a word. I'll just sit back, and they'll breathe for 20-30 minutes and have their experience. And other times I might have to get a little bit more involved. That's on a private basis. That's a one-on-one set. But like group sessions, it's a different energy. You're holding space for a lot of people, and it's you know this is a completely different dynamic, where the last thing you want to do is get pulled into one single person's energy, because then you lose your focus of holding space for everybody else. So it just depends. So some people can breathe really soft, some people can really go after it. I would say men have a tendency to really, like, because guys are like, really, they want that experience. They really want that, like, intense experience where they see stars and they're like, I was out of my body.
Right.
And I have a tendency to really, like, breathe really, really hard. But yeah, it just depends. So sometimes softly, sometimes more intense, but really, in all honesty, it doesn't take much. If you just stay consistent with the breath and you just keep breathing, you don't have to really breathe like you're running a marathon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. That's good to know. So when you're working with clients, it sounds like one of the biggest benefits, I tell me if I'm wrong, but is like sort of maybe releasing whatever energy that maybe is not serving the person. But what are some other benefits of doing this work?
Yes, I mean, countless.
Yeah.
I mean, on a just a very, very practical level, like finding some consistency in a routine, in some self-care.
Mm.
Breath work is like a beautiful form of self-care. You're giving yourself, even if it's 10 minutes, 7 minutes a day, I mean, we're breathing all day long, but when you consciously put aside a handful of minutes for yourself to fill your entire physical temple with life force, that's pretty powerful, so it's just like creating like a consistent, practice that makes you feel good, and I would just call that self-care. The big wave surfers, the guys that I've worked with, they go down to Porto Escondido and put their life on the line every time they paddle out. They're trying to increase their ability to stay calm in the eye of the storm, because you can be the best surfer in the world, but no two just like no two breathwork experiences are alike. There's no two waves that are alike, and there's always unforeseen things that happen, and when those things do happen, which they do, you have to be calm and prepared to handle it. So for those guys, it's really getting their mind, body, and spirit in alignment. And I would say even a lot of them, they're not even thinking about the spirit, but that's what's happening anyways. They're more thinking about, I need to get my head and my body in sync so I can stay calm. But there's a lot more going on there. And I don't, I'll go there if people want to go there, but I'll meet people where they're at.
So it sounds like it's a tool, like for anxiety, or if you're in a situation that, if you're practicing this when you're not actually in that situation, I'm sure it's helpful when it comes up, what to do, or a way that you can help alleviate it. I do deal with some anxiety, and I have used breath work in those moments, and I feel like it does help, especially I'm not going out on big waves, but I have situations that bring up that feeling for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could be talking to your daughter's school teacher. We could be shopping at the store. Anxiety is a part of our society. It's something that's going to come up for all of us in some form or another. And how it is expressed through each of us is oftentimes different. Some people get angry and they react, and they're just like, oh, I'm short tempered. Well, there's things are going on with your nervous system here that's causing a reaction like this. My dad was like this, so I'm like this. And there's a lot more to it. So yeah, we all deal with it in our own way, and it's all relative. Whether you're surfing 50-foot waves, that doesn't make it more intense or an anxiety filled moment, as opposed to somebody who's dealing with a boss that's not cool. You know what I mean? That brings up, that likes to pick on them or whatever. That's like they're right here. So yes, so breath work is very, very instrumental. It can be a very, very important tool that can be used many times a day for many, many reasons. Yeah. And reducing anxiety is a big one of them for sure.
And I feel like like you said, whether it's you're on a big wave or you're stressed in your car, I feel like the body is probably like, it's all the same, like input, like, it all feels like it could be you could be like not really in a bad situation, but your body could interpret it that way. So it's like almost like the same types of feelings, even though the circumstances are so different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have trauma responses, and so what, depending on what you've been through personally in your life, which is not going to be exactly like what anybody else has been through. Certain things will trigger, old, I want to call them memories. They're imprints on your nervous system, that could take you back to when you were 6 years old. So to me, like, this is one of like the reasons why I truly love this two-part pranayama, because we hold so much in our, you can't really see, but I'm just going to kind of like here, the sacral, and in here, in our heart. And this is where you notice women lots of times have a tendency to stand like this a lot. Men, hands crossed over the chest. People might just say, well, it's just comfortable for me. This is like an unconscious way of blocking, protecting, shielding what's going on here and down here.
Right.
So with this two-part pranayama, it activates those imprints that are stored in here. I mean, I don't know if you've done any studies about or done any reading about the studies they've done on like the stomach and the brain. And, our stomach is said to have more nerve endings on it than I think our entire spinal column. There's a book called The Stomach, the Second Brain. It's incredible how sensitive this is down here. This is our truth teller. This is where this is our intuition. This is where we know everything. So it holds stuff. So when you force air down here, then you force it up here. I say force, it's just mean you're consciously breathing into these two areas. It's going to move stuff that's been imprinted in there, maybe from childhood, or maybe it was, something recent, maybe it's a car accident that you witnessed, it's just, and, we see things and we take a deep inhale and then we hold it and it gets stamped. So the breath, this 2-stage pranayama, which I said in the beginnings, why I love this so much, because it focuses on these areas where we hold that and it loosens up that energy and it helps you relieve it. So it's not magic, but it's magical.
Oh, yeah.
It really is. And a lot of times people have releases where they're like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know why I'm crying. And I'm like, it's okay. But whatever it was, maybe you have a little bit of a reprieve from it. And then so you just keep doing it because there's always more to uncover. We're like onions, just keep peeling back the layers.
I love what you're saying about the stomach area too. I mean, they say it's like, listen to your gut. Like there's intuition in there. And I could see it. It also reminded me of when you kind of get stressed out and you realize like, oh, I have not been breathing, when you get to a point where like, kind of like almost holding your breath. I feel like I think that breath work just helps remind you like, okay, we're not doing that. Let's keep going and don't hold your breath. And I can feel like, sometimes with that anxiety and stress, your breathing gets shallow and all those different things. So it's good to have some time where you can really like practice getting those deep breaths. And do you recommend this as like a daily practice, like every single day?
Yeah, I would recommend people do it every single day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. There has been times in my life, where I have done it every day. Right now, I've kind of been, I'd say in probably the last 3 months, I've been really just getting deep into my other meditation practice, which is a few different forms, and I'll breathe probably, like I breathed yesterday, but I hadn't, it had probably been like 2 weeks before last time I had breathed. But when I do it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for it. My teacher, who I've just loved dearly, he has a lot of pre-recorded guided breathwork tracks. I'll just listen to one of his. I just put my headphones in and just lay in bed and breathe. And it's really, it's beautiful. So I recommend people doing it every single day, especially if you're working through some stuff. At least commit, just like, even if it's 7-10 minutes, ideally 20, but if you can only just get in like, 5 to 10 minutes, that's okay too. But ideally 20 to 30.
So
but not at the time.
Do you recommend
morning's a good time too?
Oh, morning's a good time. Like, do you recommend like for a beginner to this work, do you recommend that they do like a guided meditation or just start on your own and start with like maybe a smaller amount of time?
I think, I think I would leave that up to people. I like to empower people. So like, trust your intuition with that. Like what does your gut tell you? Oh, maybe I want to go on insight timer. Wow, there's a lot of breathwork things on here. Let me just check some of these out. You see if, you start listening to something, it doesn't really, it's not really feeling that person's voice or whatever. And then you might find something that just works for you. And then maybe like, oh, I think I could do this on my own. Maybe I'll set a playlist on my phone from Spotify and just breathe to my own music, my own playlist for 30 minutes, which is something that I do often too. Trust your intuition and let's see where it takes you. If breathwork has found them, they're going to end up right where they're supposed to be with it. This is probably not the best thing, but I don't have a website. I'm just like, if somebody needs to find me, they'll find me somehow. and like the universe is my website. so so for people that are seeking, yeah, they'll find a way. They'll find their way with it. And, you know, if they're trusting themselves, they'll end up right where they're at. And sometimes, part of the journey is like having experiences, multiple experiences to see what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah, and I feel like that's really good advice because there are certain personality types who will be like, well, I have to do this just this way and perfectly, or and then it's so quick to give it up. Whereas this way, you're kind of like, just find your own way, but definitely try it because there are so many benefits to doing it. I want to circle back to your experience with the prison system. And can you tell us a little bit about that? That sounds so interesting. And how was that received? How was the breathwork received?
Yeah, it was quite an experience for me. So I I was asked by a friend of mine who actually worked for the Prison Yoga Project, PYP, and basically they were going into different prisons and teaching yoga to the inmates. And he had been coming to some of my breathwork classes that I used to hold at my studio, and it's like, wow, he's like, I think this would be really cool. Like it, you know, let me see if I, and so there was a lot of like kind of, red tape and things that he had to get okayed, but they finally said, yeah. And so I went in with him. We went to a prison here locally in Southern California. And well, okay. We broke a few rules. I'll just say it. Because first of all, like they only allowed a certain number of guys to join the group, right? I think there was 20. Some of these guys are in there for a couple of years. Some of them are going to be in there. Like that's where they're going to be living for the rest of their lives. But it was kind of based on their behavior patterns in there. So it wasn't just like anybody could do it. But, these guys are pretty hardened because generally it's the younger guys that aren't in there very long that have a tendency to act a certain, to like kind of build a reputation. But it's the older guys that are just like, hey, they're kind of accepted where they're at, and they're like, man, I want to be able to go to this group and this activity and do this thing, and so they kind of change their behavior patterns a little bit, but yet they're very, they've been through a lot. So um I had to be very, very mindful of like the playlist of music because I always play music during my breath work.
Mm-hmm.
And of the playlist that I selected, you don't want to pick a song that has lyrics saying them, coming home or whatever, you know what I mean? I just chose music that didn't have any lyrics, to be honest with you, just instrumental tracks. But the very first time, yeah, like, these guys were, there was a lot of emotions, and they're technically not supposed to touch each other or have any physical contact, but we had guys, and everything in there is separated through race, which is unfortunate, but that's just the way the prison system is. But we had guys of different ethnicities like hugging each other, and so when I say breaking some rules, like and I remember like a couple, the guard was like looking over his shoulder because they were kind of at the other end of the room, and he's just like, he looked at me, and I'm just like, and he just turned her back around, like he didn't try to break it up because he saw how special of a moment that was. So yeah, really, really cool. And then afterwards having like a sharing circle, and I think they were already so open and already having had such a, some of them had some pretty deep experiences. They didn't have a lot to say because they were just like, okay, I've revealed enough of my, but trying to, and I'm like, and I tried to tell them like, this is, you might be processing this for a while, lean into the staff here, the counselors, the people that they have to talk to, the doctors. So if stuff has come up for you during the breath work, and maybe it's stuff that you didn't necessarily want to see, but just take your time processing it. So yeah, it was a really beautiful experience. And yeah, maybe someday I'll get back into doing that again.
It sounds amazing and so profound. And you know how you said people will kind of find, if they find the breath work, you know, if it comes to them. I feel like everyone who's listening to this podcast, I hope that they give it a chance or give it a try, because it is so amazing on so many different levels, and to not feel like it has to be perfect in the beginning. And just because I know, especially with like different types of meditation, people are like, I can't do that. They just have blocks right away. Like, I can't do that. I don't do that. It's too hard for me. But sort of the way that you've described, like giving it a try, I hope that the listeners do give it a try, because it is such a great thing to incorporate.
Yeah, it's just like anything. You're never going to know until you see what happens. Yeah, just give it a go. People often surprise themselves, and it's usually those people that are just like, these things don't work for me. I'm not spiritual, or
Yeah.
that to me, like that's like the best attitude to have, because there's no expectation. Well, there's just, there maybe there's some expectations on like nothing's going to happen, but they're not like, oh, I have to work through something super intense, and I hope this works. And so it's often kind of times the people that are just indifferent that end up just going, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, their mind is blown probably.
Yeah.
I think this has been so amazing and so helpful. I am so grateful that you came on and shared all of this with us. I do know that you said you don't have a website. The universe is your website, but if somebody wants to get a hold of you or work with you, can you tell us how they can find you?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, just through email.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and right now, I mean, I would say through social media, but I even this year, I just decided to put all that kind of to bed for the time being
Mhm.
too, because it can be a distraction, and it's different for everybody. Some people are very good about just um, using it now and then, and I wouldn't say that I was like highly addicted to it, but it just didn't feel like it was really serving me. So yeah, I'm not really accessible through social media right now, but I would say just through my email, which is frankiebsalazar@gmail.
Okay, and I'll put that in the show notes for everyone.
Okay.
And, you know, I can see some of my listeners wanting to maybe put a circle together. Just let me know and we'll contact Frankie and we could do something. I mean, I think it would be so amazing to do a fun event like that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, well, if I can get a group together, I'll definitely be contacting you. I'm so happy you were able to come on. I thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, Jessica, thank you so much. Thanks for asking me. I appreciate you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.